We're live.
All right, so let's call this meeting to order. Let's count people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so roll call shows that we've got all 5 of the counselors, and we've got the usual slate of city staff here, as well as we've got Aaron Milkey here from the fire department, and we've got Jeff Miller from HKGI here as well, and that is all I see on my list. So we are going to move forward with that and go to the open forum. Does anyone have anything that was provided to them during the for open forum reading?
We do have the note from Jesse. Did everyone get that?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
How would you like to? Would you like to read that out, or do you just think that it's just something for us to know, not necessarily for open forum?
It wasn't submitted as open forum, and it's
Yeah.
for an item on your agenda. So.
Yep, that's kind of what I figured. So just wanted to, I didn't know if that was, if you were mentioning that, Patrick, because you wanted to read it, or if it was just something that you're doing.
No, yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
That's cool. All right, so close the open forum, move on to the consent agenda. So the consent agenda today has the usual 3 things, and it has 2 additional things. So the 2021 tobacco license renewals. We right now have we have 4 places that get a tobacco license, and they applied for 2021. One of those is Grand Marais Marathon. So Craig, you have to abstain from that vote on the consent agenda. Or we can pull it and we can do that vote separately, which may not be a bad idea if you want to vote on the rest of the consent agenda. The 5th thing is hiring a hire of Christian Deschamps as a maintenance laborer for the city, for property maintenance department. So unless someone would like to pull one of those things for consideration, or Craig, if you'd like to pull the tobacco license renewals so that we can vote on that separately, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda. What say ye?
Don't you think we should take the tobacco thing off so Craig can vote on all of the rest?
That would be my preference, but I would, but I'm all open to just about anything. So it's why don't we just do that?
I motion to move to accept the consent agenda. Let's pull the tobacco voting for a separate piece.
Great. I'll second that. So there's a first and a second. Is there any further discussion on the consent agenda as amended? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote from the top of my list down. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
And Tim Kennedy, your vote.
Aye.
All right, my vote is aye as well. Consent agenda carries. I think that the next thing we should do then is vote on the 2021 tobacco license renewals and just get that done. Is there a motion to approve the 2021 tobacco license renewals?
I will make that motion.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All right, so then we'll move to the vote. Anton, your vote on this?
Aye.
Kelly, your vote on this?
Aye.
And just for fun, Craig?
Aye.
Well, you have to abstain, but it's...
Cannot vote.
Yeah, I cannot vote. Perfect. Well played. Okay, so we'll take that as an abstaining. Tim, your vote?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So that carries. Thank you very much. And so we're going to put Aaron on right now. So Aaron, go ahead and jump in and explain what you guys have here. The information in the packet I thought was really great. Yeah, just lay it all out for us and we'll go from there.
Okay, you got me? You hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So that the memo we kind of drafted and sent to you there is just a basic overview of what we're looking at. We had there's three main manufacturers of SCBAs, so we had all three of them come up and give us their sales pitch and gave us a bid basically on the package we were looking at. And it was kind of hard to get it to compare apples to apples. The initial bids were a little different than what we got it down to at the end to make sure each one we were comparing similar units, and up kind of settling on two and got those guys back and had them leave some units and hung on to them for a while, tried them out. And the consensus from the committee we had put together was to go with the MSA, which is the span that we currently have. And in our opinion, it's the best product on the market. And this being probably one of the most critical pieces of PPE we provide to our firefighters, it would be, critical that we make sure we put the best thing on them that we can. A couple other things with the MSA, like I mentioned, we currently have those. They've served us well. The service and support that we've got from them over the years has been really good. And the other big thing with these new units with MSA is there's no cost to us for the next 15 years. No batteries, firmware updates. Basically, the only thing we would have to pay for is something that we would break from, wear and tear or damage. All the other units have AA or various types of batteries that we'd have to replace 1 to 2 times a year, which over a 15-year lifespan, you're looking at anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000. So that really brings, even though this is a little higher price up front, over a 15-year span, it about evens everything out. Also, their warranty is bumper to bumper. Basically, they'll cover anything on there other than something, that we break or normal wear and tear. So that was another big benefit for the MSA, was that 15-year period. It should be no additional cost to us. I don't know if anybody's got any questions or on any more details about them.
Well, Aaron, this is Jay. I would definitely like to give you guys a lot of credit. Give the fire department a lot of credit for looking at all those things, for looking so carefully at not just the price and the usability of those items, but also how the familiarity that you have and the knowledge that you have of that equipment already, to be able to integrate it into how you currently practice. I think that's all valuable stuff that, to me, it just shows that you guys have a mastery over what you're doing, which makes me feel more confident about having the fire department come and do something at my house. So, so that's kind of where I'm. Yeah, I appreciate all the work that you put into it, the thought that you put into it, and yeah, that's what I have to say. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would echo the same thing, Jay. I think it's commendable that you, Aaron, and the volunteers from the fire department have put the kind of work in to evaluate the equipment. Not only do that, but also to look at the kind of life cycle costs on these units, even though that might be a little higher up front. I'm ready to make a motion to support the purchase of the equipment from is it MMA?
MSA.
MSA, yeah.
MSC.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, we'll go down the list just like we did before. Anton, your vote on this.
Aye.
Kelly, your vote on this.
Sorry. Aye.
Craig, your vote on this.
Aye.
Tim, your vote on this.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Motion carries unanimously. thanks for putting the work into that, Aaron. And yeah, send us a picture when you get all the new stuff. Could be kind
Yeah,
of fun.
we'll do. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. All right, so let's move right along. So the next thing on the agenda is public works demolition. So there's two parts to this item. The first part is in your packet right now, and then there's
Hey,
another
can we
part.
skip back a little bit though, Jay? Because we did actually skip an item.
Do you want? I thought we were going to move the budget down farther, but if you want to just switch them, then
I just wanted to switch them. We didn't have anybody ask to make any comments, but there could very well be people that are paying attention at home to this kind of big deal budget. So I wanted to try and keep it as close to the beginning of the meeting as possible without having Aaron have to sit through it.
Perfect. That sounds good. Sorry, my misunderstanding. I thought we were going to move it down farther, but yeah. So go ahead. 2021 budget and levy.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen also just in case folks are at home watching. This is one of the first spreadsheets in the packet. This is the description of the expense side of the budget and the revenue side in 2021, but also a history of the spending side of the budget. So you can see, where the levy monies are being spent, which departments also have offsetting revenues, and then this is really only the pieces here on top that are levy supported that we're looking at right now. So the PUC, for instance, will be approving water, sewer, and electric budgets at their meeting next week, but none of that has anything to do with the property tax. The grand total that's included in this is $990,867 for a property tax levy proposal. So what's changed between the last time you looked at this in September and now? Just a few minor things in every department. There was little spending changes here and there, and then a couple of pretty significant ones. So we'll start with the streets department item here. You can see it's actually been reduced by over $25,000, and that's based on two significant changes. One, we went from an employee with 20 plus years of experience to a brand new employee, and so there's a pretty significant change in the salary related to those. And also we have a family coverage of insurance not included in here that was included previously. So that's a pretty significant change. Then I'll move down to the special projects line item. This is a line item that we'll look at our 3-year future projection a little more closely, but that was increased. And it's really just an increase that's a placeholder to help us plan for future expenditures right now. But in total, the spending budget was decreased almost $15,000. We also had changes on the revenue side. So we had a decrease in revenue in what we call the general administration department, but this is all of the things that we get, state aids or licenses and fees and other things that don't have a department that they're attached to. The biggest change here is that we're drastically reducing our expectation for interest from our bank accounts. We had a rate that was based on a money market type account that is no longer going to be covered because it costs the bank a lot of money to collateralize the balances that we have, so they're not able to offer much of interest at all. That's most of that. Then the fire department, there was a shift between the share of the department costs in the city limits and out of the city limits. Most of that shift is based on the number of calls in the city outpacing the number of calls in the extra territory outside the city by quite a bit. And that's one of the factors that we use to divide that up. And then the golf, we significantly increased the revenue projection in the budget. And this is based on basically performance of the golf course. They beat this 150,000 number in 2020, and we have every expectation that they'll be able to do that again in 2021. Just pause right there, see if anybody has any questions they want to ask about any of that.
Mike, I'm wondering, our health insurance premium, what was our increase for the 2021?
Kim, do you have that at the top of your head?
It was about 9%.
All right. So is that all you have?
Shall I continue?
Yes. Great.
All right. This is the history of our property tax levy and the debt and general revenue components of it. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, 990, the number that we saw before, equates to just under a 2% increase. So it's a 1.82% increase over the 973 that we levied for 2020. There's an increase in the amount of general revenue in this levy that's not debt related. And then the actual debt levy itself, you can see, is just a slight decrease. This is a bit higher than the increase that you approved for 2020, but it's quite a bit lower than the about 4% that we looked at earlier in the year. And again, that's based on the changes we saw in the last spreadsheet. One of the things we wanted to think about before approving this was, what is our 5-year capital improvement plan looking like right now? So just the most important thing to point out on this is the same 3 projects that we'll have been talking about and will continue to for a while. City Hall Liquor Store is now at $6 million in this projection. It was at 4 the last time that we took a serious look at it. There is still a pretty significant cash amount that we're planning on putting towards this. It's hard to say right now whether that's going to be a possibility in 2022 to meet those numbers, or whether we'll want to have that cash set aside for other uses right now. But I think that it's possible for us to do it this way. And then this debt amount of, again, almost $3 million. And then I'm also suggesting that we might be able to go find some grant money for it. This debt amount here is then used to suggest an annual debt payment right here, based on just, again, some made up factors of what we generally have been getting for interest rates in a 20-year payback period. So we'll see this number again on the next spreadsheet. When we think about, okay, how do we fit a new $350,000 a year debt payment into the budget, and what does it do to the property tax levy to do so? So here's the 2021 current base. This was last year's projection. So we thought we would be at about 2.8, and that we'd be about 663 in revenue and 322 in debt. And you can see we're just about there on the revenue side, almost exactly, a little bit higher on the debt side, which we've now bumped up in future projection years. One of the things we've got included in this budget is a little more rec park revenue. So I'm showing that here. This is $36,000 in additional rec park revenue over the budget for 2020 is included in this. And the council priorities was increased $35,000 over what it was last year. So we thought we were going to increase at 15, and we're going to instead increase at 35. We'll see what that looks like in future years. So for 2022, we assume 2% growth in expenses. We think our debt payments will be about the same. And then we're looking at a levy of about $1,020,000, which is just under 3% increase. That assumes that we have another $40,000 of new revenue in the budget from the rec park next year, but no additional liquor revenue. So I think that that's realistic based on the performance at the rec park, particularly if we don't have any months where we're forced to be closed next year, which I don't think we'll need to do. And that I don't think it's a good idea to assume we'll have more liquor revenues, because we're not sure what that operating environment is going to be in the summertime yet next year. There'll be an additional $55,000 built into the council priorities line item. So we added $35,000 to go from 115 to 150 in 2021 budget. This projection says another 55, so it'll be 205,000 in 2022. And this is where we're making room for this big $350,000 debt payment. So one more time, we assume our expenses go up 2%. Our debt before we add a City Hall liquor store project is about the same. And then we add this $350,000 debt payment. There's another $50,000 in rec park revenues. And again, this is fairly realistic based on what our historical curve of revenues is at the rec park. That now we are looking at adding another $50,000 in 2023 in liquor store revenues. We think by then there won't be any lingering effects of COVID in our operating patterns. And then we're also looking at potentially a utility transfers increasing by $50,000. And we've talked about a number of ways that might happen. We don't have to decide yet, but I think the most likely thing is we'll talk about increasing the payment in lieu of taxes that the electric fund is providing to the general fund right now. And that is built into their long-term projections right now as well. And then we'll use, of that 205,000 that's in council priorities, we'll use 170 of it to make this payment. So we're looking at 2 years now of under 3% increases and the ability to absorb a new $350,000 debt payment to pay for a $6 million City Hall liquor store project. There are some assumptions of new revenues that are built into that. And frankly, if we don't find those assumptions to be realistic, then the options are to wait a little bit longer before we do this, increase the revenues of the property taxes a little bit faster, or use a little bit more of this project council priority money. So I'll stop there again, see if anybody has any questions about any of that.
On that sheet, Mike, how do our expenses fit in with all that exactly? It's kind of hard to track that. I see that we've got a projected increase in revenue of 2% in those years, but it doesn't really show what we're looking at for our expenditures.
I'll go back to that page. So this 2% that is built in here is an increase in expenditures, not revenues. So this is the revenue portion of this $1 million property tax levy. So this is general revenue and this is debt levy that adds up to this $1,020,000. This little 2% is actually modifying what we think our expenses are. So it's also the revenue portion of the levy is kind of also showing that same 2% increase to match what we expect is going to happen with our just general expenses in the future. I'll go back to this general revenue piece. You can see it actually fluctuates quite a bit in an effort to keep the property tax levy from fluctuating quite a bit. We find other places we either are having debt payments go up and down, or we're having other sources of revenue go up and down to try and keep this on a little flatter scale. If we look back here, you'll notice kind of a similar thing. What's going on in the general fund historically, it's kind of hard to predict that, on an easy curve to look at, because there's such a wide range of things that end up being included in here, including projects that could be capitalized but aren't, and instead we spend cash on them. So like golf course equipment sometimes shows up in here. Or a fire truck purchase is going to show up in here and kind of make this number go up and down a little bit. But when we think kind of long-term in general, what have we needed to do with this number? We're assuming that the expenses are going to change basically on a 2% rate.
Eventually here, I'm hoping sooner than later. I mean, we have contracts with the county that need to be put in place, and I would imagine with maybe what some of our expectations are, they might go up a bit higher. I'm thinking especially the law enforcement one is bound to change. I don't know where we'll go with COVID's kind of slowed things down, but the county building that's now being leased by the YMCA, we currently, contribute to, and wondering, of course, we're wanting additional monies each year for that. We have negotiations coming up again at the end of 2021 with employees. Health insurance is a cost that can skyrocket or can maintain, but I don't see that slowing down. So I'm wondering if that 2% might be a little low as we project out.
It's what we've been using in the 3-year projection for a while now. And I think it's served us pretty well in terms of our predicting. If you look at what we thought we were going to end up with as a budget and a levy in 2021 versus what we're currently proposing, it's very close numbers wise. I think all those things that you mentioned are risk factors to keep in mind and reasons you might want to consider, increasing the levy more than you would necessarily. It's also kind of one of the reasons why I think we're still proposing an increase, even though it's 1.8%. The levy is now just about $1 million. The total organization budget is closer to 10. So it's pretty easy for us to make the levy percentage what we want it to be and adjust somewhere else in the organization budget to make that happen. But I think considering the risk factors that you brought up, it's still wise to maintain this pattern of very slow, gradual increases in the levy, expecting that our expenses are going to continue to rise. I hope we get to go back to the county and talk more about these contracts in 2021. We have, of course, brought that up with the new administrator and talked a little bit also with the new engineer. And I expect that we'll be able to pick that up as soon as they've kind of got their feet under them in their organization. When we last had serious conversations, the council and the county board together, one of the principles that you had discussed at that time was trying to adjust these contracts in a way that didn't make significant changes to either the city or the county's budget. So hopefully that'll still be the case. But I also would expect them to change. Hopefully some of them will go up and down as the way that we can make that not affect each other's budgets.
Thank you for bringing that up, Kelly. I was thinking on a similar line about the, about whether or not that 2% is going to reflect the projects that we have coming up in the future. The projects that are on my mind, and I don't know actually what the schedule is for this now because of the change in engineer at the county level. But talking about the Fifth Avenue reconstruction, and then also our plan for First Street. In addition to, having the Highway 61 project be finished up tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next year. It'd be great if it was done tomorrow. So those are things that, I'm assuming that those have been taken into consideration for the future projections. Just wanted to speak that out there and make sure that that's, that is in fact part of the considerations. So.
You can see both of those projects live on our capital improvement plan. There's a budget for them. There's sources of revenue for them. Both of those have a much more significant utility portion of revenues than property tax portion. And the utilities budgets have been planning for those projects to occur for a number of years now. So although I expect they will increase our total spending to pay for them, because they're both going to be very significant projects, I think that the water and sewer utilities are preparing to absorb most of those costs, because most of the cost is the replacement of water and sewer lines. The other thing to consider is that in 2024, we're taking one of our existing debt payments off the books. And so some of the new debt that might be required to pay for, say, the First Street project will be replacing old debt for a 2020 Second Street project and some of the downtown projects that we'll be done paying for.
Perfect. That's what I was looking for. So, Mike, do you have more to keep going? Council, do you have any questions? Any further questions? All right. So, Mike, you said that you don't.
There's nothing left to look at. I just say, let's talk about what your next steps are. We offered an opportunity for folks to provide comment to you. Obviously, we're welcoming comments at any time on any topic. I always find it strange that the state wants local governments to have a hearing about the budget when you're done putting the budget together, rather than say right when you're talking about starting. So maybe that's why these have never been particularly well attended, even when we've had people in the room with us. We rarely get more than a handful of folks that want to come and listen. But as a part of this process, you don't have the ability to approve the levy tonight. We always bring it back for consideration at your second December meeting, but you will have to approve it at that meeting. So if this number is the one you want, then that's what we'll put in a resolution form for you to consider at your next December meeting.
Well, Council, I mean, this is not something that we need a motion for necessarily. We just need to indicate our intention. So I'm going to introduce this as, if I don't hear any objections, then we'll move forward with this projection. How does that sound? So the question then is, are there any objections to moving forward with this projection?
I just have a quick question that if I'm curious about what goes into some of the expenditures and different line items, can I come in and get a printout of like who we've paid and what the stuff is if I want to look at what we've paid for books and periodicals and videos or whatever for the year? Can I come in and get those things to see what
You sure
they are?
can.
Okay.
I mean, you always get to see them. There's a list of bills included in every one of your packets, and so it's just that list compiled into a very large list. But yes, it's organized by accounts, where if you want to ask about a particular account, we can show you the entire list of expenses that were approved, date, amount, who they were spent, or who they were paid to. And if you want to follow up on any of those line items, we can actually pull out the invoice that it was for and talk about it.
Okay, thank you.
Very cool. Any objections to moving forward with this? Seeing none, then I think, Mike, you got your marching orders. Mike and Kim, thank you for putting work into that, and for continuing to look into ways to make the budget meet our needs. All right, moving right along on the list. So now we can go down to what I was jumping into before, which is the DNR boat launch, public works demolition. That's where it is. So this is the first stage in the project for the boat launch down in the rec park area there. And before we even get to that point where we start talking about the demolition of the buildings, we have a request from a party that wants to purchase what we're calling the Menard building. It's the metal building that's down there, for the cost of $7,026.99. That building will be removed by the buyers, and we have, in our packet, we have the bill of sale, and we also have the release, acceptance, acknowledgement, and release by the buyer. So these are all the legal forms that we would need to make that sale complete. With that said, I will open this up for conversation. If there isn't much conversation on this, then I would also entertain a motion to accept the bid of $7,026.99 for the purchase of the Menard building down at the current Public Works facility, the old Public Works facility garage.
I'd make a motion to approve the sale of that building to the party that's interested.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. So that's opens it up for conversation. One thing that I would like to have clarified is time frame. This is not super pressing for us right now because it's winter. But my understanding is that the removal of the building will happen within the next couple of weeks. Is that correct, Mike?
The building that's being sold, they intend to start removing it right away if you approve the sale.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or discussion for this? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Starting from the top. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
Tim, your vote.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So that one then is approved. And the next step for this is the rest of the demolition. So we'll be seeing that on a meeting agenda coming up in the future. So we're definitely moving with that, and we have things moving so that we can make sure that we're on schedule with that. All right, moving right along to the next thing on the agenda. We're back at Ordinance 2020-02, residential zoning modifications. So in your packet, you can see that that there are bullet points on the memo that look at the changes that were discussed and voted upon at the last meeting. And with that said, I will open it up for conversation or for discussion on the revised draft of the zoning ordinance, and then we can jump in if we feel like we are at a place where this ordinance meets our needs and has been modified to effectively solve the issues that were presented in it previously for our community. Then we could do a first reading on this, which would then bring it back at the next meeting for a second reading. So with all that said, any discussion? I don't know, Mike, if you want to jump in and explain a little bit about what happened, or Jeff, if you want to jump in, or if we just want to go through it like we did before and make sure it says what we think it says, and then we can go. Ready, set, go.
I'll jump in quick. The ordinance now is updated so that it accurately reflects the motion that Tim made last meeting. The memo that introduces it, I did not update, I noticed. And so I just want to make sure that it's clear that both small and large apartments are moved to conditional uses in this ordinance, in the draft that's in the packet right now. Just in case somebody just read the memo that's watching from home and wants to know what's going on. The motion that was made by the council last meeting was for small, large apartments, row houses, and cottage courtyard developments to be conditional uses. So those are all moved. And then I also want to just bring up that in the mixed use zone right now, small scale residential 2 to 4 units is an approved principal use. And this change will be changing that so that if it's more than 2 units, it'll be a conditional use in the mixed use zone. So that I'm not sure whether that was part of the thought process last time or not. I just want to make sure it's clear that that's what's going on here.
So Mike, so that differs from the way the ordinance currently is, because in the current ordinance, those things are not conditional uses. They are just accepted uses. Is that correct?
If you want to build up to 4 units of residential in the mixed use zone on a regular size lot, that's currently allowed without any conditional uses. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and my intent was not to make the mixed use district more restrictive in that regard. So I'm wondering if we can make an adjustment to to the language that still allows 2 to 4 family units, or 2 to 4 family units in that district as a permitted use, but would require anything apartments larger than that to be a conditional use. That would require some additional,
Yeah,
Right.
additional work on this. Yeah,
but
I was trying to follow it in my head and make sure I understood what you were saying there, Tim.
my intent is not to make it more restrictive than what it currently is for those 2 to 4 family units. But since we have across the other districts talked about the small and large scale apartments, and we throw in there from, the small apartments are 3 to 6, and the larger 7 or more, then maybe we just have to change that language to have it read for small apartments consisting of 5 or 6. I mean, maybe we don't even have to do that. I mean, we just have to say 4 apartments or 5 units in size.
Yeah, and that's the area, Tim, where it starts getting, it becomes really semantic to me, and like, maybe Jeff, maybe you can explain if there's a way that to get around this hurdle, because it seems like what we're asking is we want to keep the mixed use zone for that section the way that it currently is, but then also having the rest of the zones reflect this change. So what do you have any insights in that? Or this might be a simple language change, but we have to make sure that we do it properly so that it doesn't imply things for other zones.
Sure. I guess the reason that we had separated out small versus large apartment buildings is that the form or the scale of a 3 to 6 unit building we felt like could be much more compatible with single family and 2 family houses, and could actually look like a large house. And then large apartments are going to be a different form of building. So that's why we separated the 2 initially. If the small apartment housing type is going to be a conditional use, as you're talking about right now, I think the only thing would be that in the mixed use district, you would say you just have to split out 2 to 4 versus 5 to 6. And I think every other district, also has duplexes separated out as well. So I think we talked about this last time. We didn't really focus on the mixed use district as part of these amendments because we were focused on the residential district. So, to clean it up, I think it would be, you'd say 1 family's permitted, 2 families permitted. I guess in this case, 3 to 4 unit apartments would be permitted, and 5 to 6 unit apartments would be conditional. I think that'd be pretty straightforward. It's not perfect, but I think it makes sense. It would be understandable.
Can we look at how that works as far as does that meet the need for that zone in what we're trying to accomplish? Tim, does that seem like that fits for you? So then 5 and 6 unit apartments are then a conditional use, or wait, gosh, now I'm getting all turned around. Yeah.
That's right. 5 or 6 unit apartments would be conditional.
Yeah. So does that meet the need that you've identified, Tim?
It does. It does. Because I was concerned that larger scale developments in residential settings may need certain conditions to make them appropriate, or in some cases it may not be appropriate. The mixed use district, because of its very nature, I would see, the value of, continuing with the 2 to 4 units as permitted use and starting with the 5 units or greater, requiring the conditional use. Just because, not every lot or every situation is the same. I'm probably more concerned with the R1 and the RCN district, because they encompass a greater portion of the city, and we always have viewed the mixed use district as being a transition from that commercial to the residential district. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for a variety of things to happen in the mixed use district that we could have a lot more latitude on, more so than maybe the R1 district that may not be completely appropriate for larger scale developments in all situations. So I think this would address that.
Okay, so Tim, are you proposing that's a change that we make to the ordinance tonight, and then we can come back at it next meeting? Because that seems like that's definitely that's a pretty significant. Well, I mean, it's not super significant, but it is something to be down zoning like that with the implied.
I guess if we could just agree to that language, I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think we all understand what the intent is, and that's to require conditional use permit for those larger scale developments. And already it was identified in the mixed use district that the 2 to 4 family use as a permitted use already seemed to be the standard. So I don't see that there's really a need to, if we could just make that amendment, if everybody else is in agreement with that, I think we could proceed with it even tonight.
So maybe I could just comment on this for just a second, if I might. So if you look at, because we're talking about section 9 of the ordinance, right? The mixed use section there, and the way that we've defined small apartment dwelling, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but small apartment dwelling is 3 to 6.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and we don't want, all we want is 2 to 4 permitted. We don't want 5 or 6 to be permitted. Is that the idea?
That's the idea.
Okay. So clearly in subdivision 3 there, you can't have small apartment dwelling listed anymore because you've defined that as 3 to 6. And so that we're not, 3 and 4 are not conditional because 2 to 4 are now going to be permitted. So small apartment dwelling has to be stricken. And you'd have to use some other terminology there that would be, I guess, something that would say apartment dwellings that are 5 to 6 units would be what would have to go in subdivision 3, number 2, instead of small apartment dwelling. And then, as Jeff indicated, we would need to add then below under permitted uses under number 2, you would have 2-family dwelling is there. You presumably would add another line there that would be, and again, I'm not as familiar with the terminology you're using, but so I'd defer to Jeff on it, but that we would then have multifamily 2 to 4. So the question I guess I have for Jeff is, could we just reinsert multifamily residence, open parent 2-4 units, close parent, and then just get rid of two-family dwelling, or does that not work?
Let me jump in quick because I've got some thoughts about this, Chris.
Okay.
And I'm going to advocate for keeping the terminology small apartment dwelling and then just adding a qualifier to it for permitted principal and conditional. So the language would be, we add small apartment dwellings, 3 to 4 units in permitted uses, and small apartment dwellings 5 to 6 units in conditional uses. And the reason I want to keep the word small apartment is because we've defined some of the requirements of that use in tables in other places in the ordinance. And if we don't have it, then I don't know what the setbacks or the minimum lot sizes or other things need to be anymore. So, I mean, that's a solvable issue, but I think just leaving it in there as small apartments and clarifying that only the small apartments are permitted and the larger ones are conditional. I think we can do that with a qualifying phrase instead.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. I think you can do that as long as you list the units. It's not perfect, but it'll work.
Okay.
So then what? And so then do you still need two-family dwelling under permitted uses under number 2, or does that just substitute with small apartment dwelling, open parent 2 to 4 units, closed parent, and then under subdivision 3, it's small apartment dwellings, open parent 5 to 6 units, closed parent? Is that what you're thinking, or does that not work? Or is there two-family dwelling? Is that a term of art here as well?
Yeah, that's also included in the table with its own requirements.
Okay.
So I think we'd keep it.
Okay, so then you need a new number 3 that says small apartment dwelling, open parent 2 to 4 units, closed parent, and then under subdivision 3, number 2, small apartment dwelling, insert open parent 5 to 6 units, closed parent.
Yeah, last qualifier on that, it would be 3 to 4 units in the permitted uses.
Ah,
If
right.
it's got less than 3, we don't consider it a small apartment. And then I think we're there.
I hope somebody's been taking notes on this.
All right, so moved.
You can't do that.
I know, I'm kidding.
Okay, so all of that. So we're trying to summarize the point of what we're trying to do is we're trying to maintain for the mixed use zone what is currently there while still using the different language and having the conditional use for the what we're calling small apartments. So that's what we're trying to get at. We're wordsmithing it kind of on the fly here to make sure that we go with it. What does the council feel about that concept and the language that is being discussed, so that if the council feels good about that language, then we can continue to move forward on this. So there's, we can continue to move forward either by asking for a draft to be written so we know exactly what it says, even though we understand what the point of it is, or we can move forward with the first reading, understanding that language will come. So, or we can go back to the drawing board. There's lots of options. So, so where are we at, council? What do you think?
I'm good with changing, updating what we've just talked about now into it without starting over or doing any great big at length. I would like to know, I'm not comfortable with the first reading myself, even though I like what we have. I saw a large article in the paper on the front page. Obviously, we've been talking about this, but I still, short of getting the letter that was in our packet this week, I still wonder, I'd like to have some public feedback now that we actually have what hopefully we think is a finished product. If a lot of people kind of weighed in, or not a lot, 20 something weighed in. I'm hopeful some of those people have been paying attention and would come back and weigh in, but I'm wondering if we put something in either our PUC bills that it's completed, if we send a postcard to all those within who have meters or whatever. I mean, we can reach out to our public. We can kind of go to their doorstep and say, hey, we've got this ready. And then I'd like to finish it out in January and give people a little bit of time to see what we've worked so hard to put out there and hope that they like what we did. But that's my thought is I really would like people, I know we're in COVID times and we can't invite people in, and it's not going to be anytime soon that we do get to, even though there's a vaccine coming about. I don't think things are going to change for 90 days or more. So I still would like to have feedback from the public as to what they think, if they're happy with what we did.
All right. I mean, yeah, I definitely get that, Kelly. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, that I feel like we've been pretty transparent with a lot of the work that we've done on this, you know, having it, you know, having work sessions and working on it pretty thoroughly during public meetings and things. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Well, what does the rest of the council think about that? You know, I mean, I agree with Kelly that there really doesn't need to, we don't need to rush this thing through. We've already been taking our time on it. There's a lot of things that have changed because of that, you know, and it's a stronger ordinance because of that. So what does the council think? We want to give it some time still and then finish this, like shoot for finishing this thing out in January, or, you know, do we feel comfortable enough with it as it is right now to move forward? So anybody have any strong feelings on that? I mean, I see the sense of, you know, not rushing it. I also, if we're at a place where we all understand that this is where the ordinance should be, then I don't really, you know, I don't see the need to really slow it down too much more. So those two things may seem contradictory, but I promise you they're not. So does anybody have any thoughts?
I guess I'd just say that I think that the change kind of back to the more close to how it was originally written, that we just talked about tonight in length. I don't think that clarification in the mixed use district is any reason to postpone anything. I think that more keeps that district in its principal uses more in line with how it historically has been. And, you know, I mean, I guess to play devil's advocate, I don't know if we haven't gotten much. I think if we haven't gotten much feedback now, I don't know how much between now and the holidays and New Year's, you know, I mean, I guess I don't see any reason in any harm in waiting, except for it would be nice to wrap this up. And I think, you know, Tim's obviously put a lot of work into this, and might, not speaking for him, but might feel good for him to exit stage right with, you know, all the work that the planning commission did and that he has helped in explaining it to us, to get this, you know, to do a first reading and do the second one at our last meeting in December. I think all the feedback that we did get, I think that we listened to it. I think that we made changes that addressed a lot of those concerns, you know, looking at lot size, looking at setbacks. We had a lot of discussion about that at the last meeting. And, you know, I mean, there is no rush on this, but, you know, in some ways, I mean, there is, because I mean, you know, what we're trying to do is solve a problem, what it takes to build, you know, for people to be here, and to be able to afford to live here. And I think that these opportunities, I don't know if 2 weeks is going to solve that, a month is going to change anything, but, you know, I don't know. I feel like it would be a nice bow at the end of the year to have this done.
Okay. So I mean, yeah. So I guess is that a motion, Anton, for this, or is that something that you know, I just want to get the temperature here where we're at.
I mean, I'd make the motion, but I guess if ever, you know, Tim looked like he wanted to say something, if, you know, Kelly spoke, I mean, if Craig's got anything to add too, I mean, I'm certainly interested in what everybody else has to say too, you know, I mean, I think that's part of it, but whether I make a motion, somebody seconds it and we continue the discussion, or we just kind of hash it out here, and then, you know, maybe Tim will say something that groundbreaking that'll make me not wish I wouldn't have made a motion
Well,
here.
we really hope, right? We don't hope.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I don't think I have anything groundbreaking to say, but, you know, what I will say is that I do think we've given this the discussion that it needed, you know, from the get-go. You know, the Planning Commission spent a lot of time going over this, you know, brought it to the council, sent it back to the Planning Commission for additional opportunities for public comment or to respond to public comment and make any other suggestions. And it's been back to the council, and we've talked about it. I'm not sure. I think I agree with you, Anton. I'm not sure what a couple more weeks or a month might mean. I mean, I know I personally have talked to some of those that have expressed concerns and try to talk through some of that stuff, and hopefully the changes and modifications that we've made at the council level is reflective of those comments and concerns that were raised to us. So, you know, I mean, I'm all in favor of hearing people out and trying to make sure we do the right thing, but I'm not sure that we're going to get this any more right if we wait another couple weeks or another month or two. So I would support you know, doing a first reading tonight if you know, we're interested in doing that.
So, Mayor, could I make just a quick comment?
Go ahead, Chris.
So just from a logistical standpoint, you have an ordinance before you now. Councilor Kennedy talked about making a change to that ordinance. I'm not quite sure how you want to handle it procedurally, but from my standpoint, I think there should be a motion to amend based on what was discussed in terms of the mixed use. So there should be some motion to amend the current ordinance to do that. And then you could decide if you want to do a first reading of it or not, but you should put the ordinance in the form that you want it to be in.
You know, I would be willing to make that motion, but we should also, you know, make sure that all the other changes and amendments that we made are acceptable to everybody, and that we're ready to go ahead with the rest of the changes that were presented. And if we are, then I would make the motion that we make those amendments, and I'll make it in a separate motion. So I just want to make sure we clarify that the rest of the changes are accepted.
Well, I believe that, now correct me too if I'm wrong here, Chris, but because the other motions that were made to amend happened at the last meeting, and now what we have is a modified version of the ordinance. A first reading of that would be on the language that's in the ordinance right now that's presented to us, unless we amend it like we're talking about doing.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, so you don't need to make another motion to accept the amendments that you already approved at the last meeting.
Yeah.
You because my recollection, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a motion last time to do that, right? To put that language in the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
there
so
were
now,
motions to make all the changes that are included in this version.
So then I believe it becomes more so that Tim is just double checking with everybody to say, are those changes that we made at the last meeting, do they represent what we wanted them to represent? And then a separate issue, this new amendment for the mixed use zone. So I think that's where we're at. So let's start with the first question. Does everyone do the previous changes that we made at the last meeting, do they solve the problems that we sought to solve them? Is the council okay with the language that's in there?
Yep.
I'm seeing lots of nodding, so that's good. So we can move on to amendments, to the amendments here. And so we have, Tim, I don't know how you want to summarize that. If you want to say, I'm just going to read here, motion to modify the permitted uses in the mixed use zone to include small apartments, 3 to 4 units, and modify the conditional uses in the mixed use zone to include small apartments, 5 to 6 units.
I'll second that if you're making a motion.
That's the language that Mike had mentioned, and to retain the other stuff that was in there, the 2-family units and the 2 to 4 family small apartments as permitted. 2 to 4 family units as a permitted use in the mixed use district.
Well, the language that I threw in the chat box is continuing to replace the 2 to 4 units with new language. So the 2 to 4 units is stricken through in the ordinance that you have in front of you, and we would replace it with small apartments, 3 to 4 units. And there's already 1 unit and 2 unit uses allowed. So in essence, up to 4 units is still permitted use in the mixed use zone, but we've just changed the way we describe it a little bit.
Right.
Okay. So Anthony, you were going to make that motion. You can go ahead if you want to. So.
Yeah, Tim, if you can do it, I don't have my computer, so I can't read out of the chat box that Mike sent, but just so we get the language right. I think everybody understands what it is, but I'm not sure I could repeat it from the blurb when it showed up on my screen.
Well, I don't know that I can repeat it either, but I think what I understand it to be is that when the motion would be to amend the language to state 3 to 4 units, small apartments, 3 to 4 units as a permitted use in the mixed use district, and small apartments 5 to 6 unit as a conditional use in the mixed use district.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Thank you for everybody sticking together on that wonky subject, but it's good that we get the language right so that it reflects what we need it to reflect. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this motion? So this is an amendment to the ordinance. So anything else? All right, hearing nothing, then we'll go to the roll call vote. Anton, your vote?
Aye.
Kelly, your vote?
Aye.
Craig, your vote?
Aye.
Tim, your vote?
Aye.
All right, and my vote is an aye as well. So the amendment carries. That amends the ordinance as it is in front of us. So now the next thing is, do we want to do the first reading of this ordinance tonight? If we do, then we make a motion and we second the first reading, keeping in mind too that the first reading needs to have a second reading follow it up. So if we get a lot of crazy feedback, or not crazy, I don't want to use that word. If we get a large amount of feedback about this ordinance, then we have the opportunity to modify, but we also can move forward with the second reading if we're ready to. So those are the considerations to have. Where are we at with this?
Somebody tell me what the ordinance number is.
2020-02.
I'd make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2020-02.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, move forward to a roll call vote. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
Tim, your vote.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So that motion carries, and we will be bringing that back at a future meeting for the second reading.
So now that we've got a relatively stable draft, I think we'll have the opportunity to prepare a clean version of the ordinance for you to read through as well. It's still a little difficult, I know, to dig through the strike-throughs and underlines and everything else. But it's a pretty big effort it's basically the entire ordinance that we have to prepare a clean version of. So we wanted to make sure that it said what you wanted it to say before we went through the effort to do that, but we'll do it now.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. All right, do we have any other items for the anything else we need to talk about, or move on to council reports? I believe we're ready for council reports. All right, great. We will move on to council reports. Anton, your report.
Let's see. We have the business park, up in the business park with the EDA. There's been a lot sale to the Cook County Historical Society for a warehousing facility for all the artifacts that were down in the old lighthouse keepers building, you know, where the museum is, which is prone to flooding like many things down in that elevation. And so they're working on, I don't know, actually know when that closes. I believe that the sale price was, Mike would probably remember, I think it was $20,000, which would take care of all the assessments that
It's
were
20 plus closing costs.
20
Yeah, and it
plus
does
closing
cover all the
costs.
assessments.
Okay. And then we had another lot sale up there, but that, I guess they just backed out. There was some back and forth with language as far as what are permitted uses and services being one of those things. And so that they actually put an offer in on another piece of property while they were waiting for everything to get sorted out. And their offer was accepted on the other piece of property. And so they backed out of the lot sale up in the business park, which is kind of unfortunate. And oh boy, what else do we have? It was Heidi's last meeting as on the EDA last night. So a whole bunch of folks dropped in to say thanks, like Rob Eklund and just all the folks that have helped out, or, you know, that she's been in contact with over the years in her role on the county board and with the EDA. And I'm sure Mary will call me tomorrow and say, hey, how come you didn't say about this? And I will say it's because I forgot, and I apologize, but who knows? Maybe Tim will say something and it'll jog my memory, but that's what I got right now.
All right. Thank you, Anton. Kelly, your report.
I don't really have any meetings going on right now. A couple things that I do have that I want us to keep on our radar is we've been asked now 3 times about the dog park. So that's something that I'm hoping we at least approach a little bit at a meeting here in the very near future. Patrick's email on Friday, our weekly update, included a picture of new signage at the liquor store. Was that just the one sign? We're not doing a whole lot there, I take it.
There's more pictures than that. I just didn't include them all because it took up space.
Okay.
But as my understanding, there's new signage above the cooler, and then it's all internal.
Okay. Because I'm like, I hope we're not doing too much with this, since someday in the near future we may have a new rebuilt place. But okay. The other thing I wanted to comment on that is we went the other night just to see for Christmas lights to get out of the house for something to do. 10th and 11th Avenue West, which are dirt streets, or avenues actually, I guess, are horrible, beyond horrible. And I would hope that, obviously this is not the time of year to touch them going into winter and frozen ground. They are terribly bumpy. The drainage is improper, causing big spots where the road is falling away. And I would hope that we could put that on our list as something that next spring, summer, when the weather turns better, we might be able to get some gravel on those roads for the people and have them bladed out. They're in terrible shape. And I just can't imagine living on that and having to drive it every day. So those are the couple things that I just wanted to put on the list.
And on that, some of the people who live on I think it's 10th, have taken to kind of ditching their own area in front of their driveways, to make sure that the water flows. So definitely something that we need to pay some attention to in the spring. So make a note of that. We'll come back to it when the ground thaws in like 6 months or whatever. All right, moving right along. Craig, your update?
Yeah, on the park board, 2 meetings ago, we did across the board 5% increase, but then we tabled a couple items. And one thing that we came back to was we increased the 2-month rate 25% over last year's price because there was some pricing disparities in when you started looking at how long people stayed and how long certain people, it just didn't look out right. So we made that change. And then the other change we made on standard sites, we are requiring a 4-month minimum camping rate payment in order to qualify for on-site storage for 12 months. So that you kind of eliminated people that, not eliminated people, but you have a camper there for 12 months, you come up and use it for 2 months. We were leaving money on the table sort of for not having, a 4-month premium, June, July, August, September are premium months. So we're trying to get more use out of those sites, I guess is how you'd say it. And I don't think it's unfair for anybody, but it's just to try to maximize the sites that we have and try to work better with the people who want to store their campers there 12 months out of the year, but yet we have sites that, need to be rented. So that's the changes made at the last month's meeting.
Okay, Craig, can I ask you a question about that, Craig?
Yeah.
I don't know if I understand. So you're saying that, and maybe
I don't understand. I mean, I went through this with Dave quite a bit because it's the structure of pricing it's like, oh my God, okay, you charge for that and you do for that and you do for that. It's kind of confusing. We're trying to make it less confusing, I guess, but go ahead.
But they're not leaving their camper sitting in the same spot for 12 months and only paying for 4 months.
Yes, they are.
What?
They pay storage when the campground's not open as well. And so there were some folks that were paying a rental rate for 3 months of usage and then 9 months of storage usage.
Oh.
Basically, the rates are being adjusted thinking about kind of the 12-month return that each site is producing.
Sure.
Right.
So that's where those adjustments are trying to kind of get that 12-month return to be a little more reasonable in those sites.
Right. And those are just on the standard sites or not on the premium sites or, yeah.
Okay. That's all right. Thank you.
Cool. Anything else, Craig?
Nope. That's it.
All right, Tim.
Yeah, no meetings, but we'll have a PUC meeting next week where Mike said we're going to work on setting rates. So be able to report that back at the last meeting of the month. Just one other information item. Maybe you've seen Crooked Spoon has had their food truck down on their lot. It's their first attempt at trying to get back into business after the fires. And, hope you can get down there and give them some business.
Absolutely.
Already done.
That'll be next week for me, I'm sure. All right. Thanks, Tim. Okay, my update. So most of the meetings that I've had, most of the conversations that I have had to do with responding to the rising rate of COVID in the county and the city, and also the planning for the rollout of the vaccines that have been identified as effective. So this doesn't really have a lot to do with us. A lot of it is just me educating myself so that I understand what the rollout looks like, and so that I understand how to speak about it intelligently. I've been getting quite a few interview requests from different outlets that are asking about, well, what does Grand Marais think about this? What is are you guys nervous about this? Does it are you afraid that you're going to get forgotten? And I've spoken with public health. I've spoken with the folks that are working on this at the hospital. I've spoken with some people at the state even about how this rollout is going to go. Basically, the vaccines are going to show up for the people at the hospital and the care center first, and then everybody else gets in the same queue as everybody else in the state. We do have a couple of things that will move us up the queue a little bit, and a couple things that'll move us down the queue a little bit. So to me, it sounds like the availability of this in our community is going to be pretty much on par with the rest of the state and other people in rural areas. We will probably be ahead of a lot of people in many rural areas just because of our proximity, the fact that we're a critical access, and that we don't have a lot of basically that we're a critical access out here. So that's
Jay, just a reminder, and it'd probably be good for everybody to hear as we talk about things. One of the staff had a conversation with someone within the union about what was going on here. That union person took what the staff person said, totally out of context, twisted it, and went on CNN, national media outlet, reporting that we had a number of nurses in our hospital out with COVID, like over a third or about a third of them out, and it was not true. We still don't have 5 nurses who have even had COVID. So if you're approached, if people want to talk to you, be very careful about what we state and to who, because things sometimes get manipulated. So just wanted to remind people as you get approached to be very cautious about who it is. I know some of us know people directly, or, we have local medias and different things, but yeah, it was a very unfortunate incident and it was specifically stated, our hospital, Grand Marais, Minnesota, on CNN. So just be real careful if anybody talks to you about stuff as to what you put out there.
Yeah, and then that's why I'm trying to do as much homework as I can about it. The bottom line of this for our community, though, is that yes, vaccines are coming, hooray, but that doesn't mean that we can't still keep doing what we're doing. Cook County does have the lowest per capita rate of infection in the state. Something for us to be proud of, but that's still a lot of people in our community are getting this. So we still need to wear our masks. We still need to socially distance. We still need to respect and honor these things so that we can help keep one another safe. So that's really the closing message that I'd like to put on that. So that concludes my report. Does anyone have anything else? Got Mike, Kim, Patrick, Chris, I suppose, if you want to make a motion for something. All right, hearing no more business, thank you for your work tonight. We are adjourned.
Have a good night, everyone.
Everybody.
Merry
Christmas.